Okay, so get ready to like travel back in time a bit to the early days of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Because today we're diving into a personal diary from Barcelona.
Oh,
It's one thing to read like news articles or watch a documentary,
right.
but it's a whole other thing to get inside someone's head.
Yeah.
It's like the whole world is changing around them.
Yeah, no, totally. It's like finding an old family photo album or something. Like
Mm-hmm.
history just becomes way more personal. And that's what
Hmm.
this diary feels like, raw, unfiltered,
Yeah,
full of little details that really bring the past to life.
exactly. And this isn't just any diary. It starts on March 13th, 2020,
Okay.
the day Spain declares a state of emergency.
Wow.
So it's like the author goes from joking about stocking up on toilet paper to
Hmm.
realizing, wait, this is actually serious.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt that kind of shift when something you've been watching from afar
Oh, yeah.
suddenly like lands on your doorstep?
Absolutely. It's that moment when the abstract becomes real.
Yeah.
And for this author, that reality is this eerie, almost post-apocalyptic Barcelona.
Yeah.
He even compares his apartment building to a small castle surrounded by bloodthirsty barbarians.
Okay, that's intense.
Yeah.
You can practically feel his anxiety in that line.
Yeah.
It's like the city itself becomes a character in his story.
Mm.
The once bustling streets are now empty.
Yeah.
And even the people who are out seem to be moving differently.
Exactly. He calls it a jousting tournament of social distancing.
Adjusting turn.
Yeah. Like acquaintances crossing the street to avoid each other.
Wow.
That awkward dance of trying to maintain a safe distance.
Yeah.
It really shows how the pandemic changed even those basic social interactions.
It's so true. And it's interesting how this whole thing plays out in his relationship with technology.
Oh, interesting.
He talks about how social media really lived up to its name.
Yeah.
It becomes like the only way to connect with family and friends,
Right.
to get news and like misinformation too,
Mm-hmm.
to feel like you're part of something bigger than your own four walls.
Right. Like it's a lifeline.
Totally.
It's a reminder that technology, for all its flaws,
Yeah.
can also be a lifeline in a crisis.
Mm-hmm.
It helps us keep some sense of normalcy,
Yeah,
to combat that isolation,
definitely.
to share our fears and hopes with the world.
And sometimes that connection takes on a really powerful form.
Mm-hmm.
Like that moment he describes when all of Barcelona erupts in applause.
Oh.
Not for performance or anything, but for each other,
Wow.
for the healthcare workers,
Yeah.
for anyone and everyone on the front lines.
I've seen those videos.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It still gives me chills.
It's a really powerful expression of resilience.
Mhm.
Imagine hearing that from your own balcony.
Wow.
The longing for connection, the
Yeah.
fragility of life.
Yeah.
It makes you think, what would your own pandemic anthem sound like?
Wow, that's a really powerful thought.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, as the diary goes on,
Mm-hmm.
we start to see this disconnect between the idea of quarantine
Okay.
and like the messy reality of it.
Yeah.
He was thinking empty streets, ghost town vibes,
Right. That classic gap between expectation and reality.
Exactly.
And it's so relatable, I think.
Totally.
Even if you haven't been through a pandemic lockdown.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like how many times have you planned the perfect vacation
Uh-huh.
only to have it totally derailed by like real life?
Right. Life happens.
Yeah. And in the diary, the author keeps seeing people finding loopholes in the lockdown,
Really?
like walking their dogs a little too long,
Uh,
carrying empty shopping bags just to have an excuse to be out.
it shows that human need for connection, I think.
Yeah.
That need for normalcy even when the world feels upside down.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, those early guidelines were confusing.
Oh, they were so confusing.
One minute it's stay home, the next it's make sure you're getting exercise.
Yes.
It's no wonder people didn't know how to behave.
Exactly. And the author even questions if this is really a war,
Oh, interesting.
like some people were calling it. He points out that he still has access to food, shelter, the internet.
Right.
It's not exactly the battlefields you read about in history books.
It's a good point. Even in a global crisis like this,
Yeah.
experiences are very personal
Hmm.
and often unequal.
That's so true.
Someone might feel like they're at war with this invisible enemy,
Right.
while someone else is facing job losses or food insecurity
Yeah.
or the mental health toll of isolation.
Right. And the diary doesn't shy away from those harder realities.
Mm-hmm.
He mentions seeing people asking for money on the streets,
Yeah.
and you can just feel this internal struggle in him,
Oh, wow.
this awareness of his own privilege,
Mm.
the fact that he has the option to help
Right.
while other people are facing these impossible choices.
It's like these large-scale events pandemics,
Hmm.
they magnify the cracks that are already there in society.
It's so
They
true.
force us to confront these uncomfortable truths
Yeah.
about inequality and injustice.
For sure.
Yeah.
But beyond those external impacts,
Yeah.
we see how this lockdown is affecting him internally, too.
Yeah. How so?
He talks about losing track of time,
Mm-hmm.
the days blurring together.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know about you, but I definitely felt that.
Oh, absolutely. The monotony, the disrupted routine,
Yes,
it's a recipe for mental and emotional fatigue.
it really is.
And he describes it so well, this
Wow.
feeling of being trapped in a surreal loop
Wow.
where one day just bleeds into the next.
Yeah.
He's trying to be creative to find motivation, but it's like his mind is in lockdown too.
That's such a good way to put it.
Right.
Like his mind is in lockdown, too.
Right.
And it makes you wonder, even if things go back to normal,
Yeah.
whatever that means,
Right.
do we ever really shake that feeling?
It's a good question.
Is there a part of us that's forever marked by these experiences?
It's like that saying, the world breaks everyone and afterwards some are strong at the broken places.
Wow.
But what if in this case, it's
It's
not
like-
just about individual strength, but like a collective healing,
That's interesting.
a recognition that we've all been through something huge.
Mm-hmm.
And that shared experience, as isolating as it felt sometimes,
Yeah,
is part of what connects us now.
that's a really powerful thought.
Yeah.
And speaking of connections,
Mm-hmm.
the author also reflects on his own family during this time.
Okay.
He mentions his 92-year-old grandmother living in Romania. Yeah, and she's lived through, like, more than her fair share of historical upheavals.
Yeah, I bet.
Wars, revolutions, you name it,
Wow, that's a fascinating juxtaposition.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Here's this young man in Barcelona grappling with this pandemic. And across the continent, his grandmother is carrying the weight of decades of change.
It's like he's got anxieties about this one event.
Exactly.
And she's lived through so many.
And it makes him question his own anxieties,
Yeah.
his own sense of what's normal.
Mhm.
He even wonders if he would be a different person if he had been born into different circumstances.
Oh, interesting.
Oh,
Like,
no.
what if he had more money?
Yeah, exactly. Like if money wasn't an issue, would he react differently?
Huh? It's that age-old question of nature versus nurture.
Right.
How much of who we are is because of our experiences? And how much is just like ingrained in us?
It's like this global crisis becomes this lens
Totally.
to examine these really personal questions
Yeah.
about identity and resilience
Hmm.
and the things we carry with us,
Right.
both individually and as a society.
And as the diary goes on, those questions become even more urgent.
Yeah.
The tone shifts. It becomes more,
I don't know the word for it.
yeah.
Unraveled.
Yes, unraveled. And I think that's it.
Like you could feel the tension increasing,
Mm-hmm.
both in him and in the world around him.
Oh, wow.
It's like we're entering this whole new chapter in the diary now.
Mm,
The stuff about quarantine life is still there,
right.
the empty streets, the social distancing.
Yeah.
But now there's this undercurrent of something heavier,
Yeah.
something kind of unsettling.
You can feel it, right?
Yeah.
It's subtle, but it's definitely there.
Yeah, like the author himself is changing.
I think so too.
Like the way he sees the world is becoming more fragile.
Mm-hmm.
Remember those silent ambulances he mentioned?
Oh, yeah.
They pop up more and more in these later entries.
Really?
Yeah, it's eerie.
Wow.
It's like this constant reminder of the virus's toll.
Right, because it's so easy to forget about that
Totally.
when you're not seeing it every day.
It's like out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. But he can't look away
Exactly. He's stuck with it.
because while he's dealing with isolation,
Right.
other people are fighting for their lives,
Yeah.
facing a whole other level of fear and loss.
And it's a reality that's easy to forget even now.
It really is.
It's so easy to get caught up in the headlines and the numbers.
right.
But each one of those numbers is a person, a life,
I was like,
a family that's changed forever.
exactly. It's heavy stuff.
It is.
Yeah.
And the author's also really aware of the pandemic's other effects,
Like what?
the way it's making those social and economic divides even worse.
Yeah.
He keeps seeing people asking for money,
Mm.
and you can sense this growing anxiety in him
About.
about the world outside his window. You
Or,
know,
right.
it's like the streets of Barcelona are reflecting these bigger anxieties
Yeah.
about the future.
About what happens when things fall apart.
Yes, exactly.
Very.
And it makes you think,
Yeah.
what would your own breaking point be?
Ooh, that's a good question.
At what point does that initial shock of a crisis
Mhm.
turn into something more?
Right? Like something deeper.
Something that changes you.
About who you are and how you see the world.
Exactly. It's a big question.
It is.
And the diary doesn't give us any easy answers.
Of course not.
In fact, his own struggles start to take center stage.
Oh, really? How so?
He talks about feeling like a ghost in his own life.
Wow.
The days blurring together.
Yeah.
His routines and passions
Yeah.
feeling meaningless.
That's really common, though.
Is it?
Oh, yeah. With prolonged stress and uncertainty.
Makes sense.
It's like that part of our brain that gets excited about things.
Mhm.
It just shuts down.
Wow.
And you're left with this emptiness,
Yeah.
just going through the motions.
And for him, it's even worse because he feels guilty.
Guilty.
Yeah, like survivor's guilt.
Oh, wow.
He keeps thinking about his grandmother.
The one who lived through all those historical events.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
She's been through wars, economic hardship.
Right.
And here he is, safe in his apartment,
Struggling with being bored.
basically.
And it makes him question his own strength.
Yeah, totally.
Wow.
Like maybe resilience isn't something you just have or don't have.
Right.
Maybe it's about what you've been through.
The challenges you face.
And exactly.
The stories you carry.
And sometimes those stories come from your family.
Oh, totally. Like a family heirloom almost.
Yes. It makes you think about your own family's history,
Mm-hmm.
the things your parents or grandparents survived,
Yeah.
and how that might be shaping you right now.
Even if you don't realize it.
Right. And as the diary goes on,
Yeah.
you can feel him wrestling with these ideas.
Trying to figure it all out.
Exactly. Trying to make sense of his own fears.
In the context of this massive global event.
Yes. But then
Yes.
the diary just ends.
What?
Yeah, abruptly.
He doesn't say why.
He mentions a cough, a fever,
No.
and then nothing.
So we're left hanging.
We're left hanging.
Wow. That's intense.
It's almost like he's running out of steam.
Yeah. Like the entries are getting shorter.
Way shorter.
Like he doesn't even have the energy to write anymore.
It's like all that nervous energy from the beginning.
Yeah.
It's morphed into this heavy exhaustion.
Yeah. You can practically feel it in his words.
And that fear he had about the outside world,
Mm-hmm.
it's starting to feel more real now.
Because those anxieties are starting to hit closer to home.
Exactly. Like he mentions the police presence.
Oh, yeah.
It feels like it's everywhere now.
He says they're on every corner.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And it's not even comforting.
Right. It's more unnerving.
Yeah, it's like a constant reminder that
Mhm.
things are not okay.
That someone's always watching.
Exactly. And then he talks about visiting his girlfriend.
Oh, wow. What happens?
She's totally different.
Different how?
Like she's lost weight. Her eyes are red.
Oh, no.
She's barely holding it together.
That's really scary.
And you can tell it really shakes him up.
Because it's a reminder that this isn't just happening to him.
Exactly. It's affecting everyone he cares about too.
And the numbers keep rising.
Every day.
Right.
It's like this invisible wave is crashing over everything.
And he can't escape it.
No one can. And then in one of the last entries,
Yeah.
he mentions a cough
Oh, no.
and a fever.
You're kidding?
Nope.
Oh, wow.
And that's it. That's where the diary ends.
He doesn't say anything else.
Nothing.
So we don't know what happened to him.
We don't know if he recovered, if things went back to normal.
It's kind of terrifying when you think about it.
It really is. It's like this stark reminder
Of what?
that even in the middle of trying to understand things,
Right.
life can just...
Change in an instant.
Exactly.
Wow. That's a lot to unpack.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, it really makes you think about how we understand these big historical events.
Totally. Like we read about pandemics in history books.
Right.
But this diary, it brings it all back down to a human level.
Exactly. It's not just numbers and dates anymore.
It's about real people
With real fears and anxiety.
trying to make sense of a world that's been turned upside down.
And that's something we can all relate to, right?
Absolutely.
Mm.
And that's the power of a primary source like this.
It connects us to the past.
But it also makes us question the present.
And maybe even rethink the future.
Exactly. So the next time you read about a historical event,
Mm-hmm.
take a moment to think about the human stories behind it.
The diaries, the letters, the photos.
Because those stories have the power to transport us
To make us feel
and to remind us that we're all connected.
more than we realize.
And that's something worth remembering.